you have your Bible, I want to invite you to open to Romans 12. We've been in the middle of a series called The Common Life, and this whole series has been circling around one idea and one word, and this word is koinonia. It's going to come up on the screen, and koinonia means a shared life, a partner life. It's not. It means, it's the common life, the shared life, and a partner life. This concept of koinonia is where you get the term fellowship. This is where you get the idea of actually having connection with one another. This is not about just having real surface level relationship, just having coffee, just hanging out, being a group of believers that just gather in the same area or hang out, but yet you don't actually do real deep life with one another. This is about shared, not just life, but shared stakes. Like the investment that you make into something, now I have an equal investment. The risk is on the table and the reward is on the table. This was a deep, actual, meaningful thing that this community would live in. And so in the ancient past, back in the day, they would actually embrace this into a full concept. And we've been talking what would it look like if the church, the ecclesia, the gathering, the assembly of the body of Christ were to look like actual koinonia. Not a group of individuals that are coming with their individualized faith, but they came together and says, we are actually all one body, and Christ is the head. And so when we show up, we actually bring a completed picture of what this picture that God has orchestrated for us to have and to embody. And so the question that I have for us today is, if that's true, and the koinonia is the goal for us to experience this common, rich relationship in life with one another, then the question I want to look at today is, then how we see each other actually matters with how we treat each other. If we're going to embody koinonia in a shared life, we need to ask the question, so then how do we actually view one another? And there's been a model that's been handed to us through our experience, through our adult life, and now through our experiences, and we've seen this time and time again, which is this. Most of the time when it comes to us having interpersonal relationship with one another, there is a really easy way to get plugged into this viewing perspective of how we view one another, which is, if you begin to show me your faults, and over a span of time, if I see patterns and rhythms in your life, this now becomes a part of who you are. I begin to treat you a specific way because of how you function and how you act. And we've heard specific terms that get thrown out. We see this in relationships all the time, but there's things that begin to happen to where, if you know me, I have specific tendencies. And my tendencies, when they show up, then you'd be like, oh, that's just Mike. Right? If you know specific things about anyone that's in your life, you can think about your spouse, you can think about your kids, you can think about neighbors, friends, anyone, quite literally. And when things come up, you go, oh, well, you know how so-and-so is. And there's this common experience that takes place that just says, oh yeah, that's who they are. And we have normalized that, but what we don't know and understand is that subconsciously underneath, we begin to actually treat them with their faults in mind. And when you function with treating someone with faults in mind, there becomes a framework with how you interact with them, and there could be different interactions. We can now have some animosity, some resistance towards them at times. We can have now boundaries, and we can push back and reject at times. There can be things that now come up that changes the interpersonal relationship, because we've already deemed them to be in the specific box. We've developed a construct in this dynamic. Think about it in your marriage, think about it in your family system, think about it in your business, think about it just within your natural friends on how you see those friend dynamics work out. We see it all the time. And when you walk this road out unknowingly, what can end up happening is you can become a person that you would never agree to this naturally on the saying or the phrase of what I'm going to say, but what happens is when you begin to interact with this and you don't know, control is such an easy thing to creep into the heart on how we begin to manage our relationships. And this is what it looks like. Have you ever had a coach growing up playing sports? And they're a good coach, but they never actually pointed out the good things. They always kind of rode your back and just constantly were nitpicking and fixing things, right? Okay, have you ever had, when it comes to relationships with, like, maybe you can go back into your childhood and it felt like your parents were constantly telling you what to do and correcting you, and it felt like you were walking on eggshells and you had to do everything right. Let this land a little bit more. Think about your marriage. Uh-oh. Okay? Think about the moments in your marriage to where things are coming up, and then you begin to point out small things that should change. And what we're talking about is actual failures, actual mistakes, actual issues that are on the table. We're not making these things up. We're not projecting. We're just saying, here's a problem, and you begin to talk about the problem. And as you talk about the problem, then another one arises. And the other problem that arises is this: you're not allowed to talk about my problems. Oh, just my marriage. Sit. Let's talk about this. Right? There's this thing, it's real, it's normal. And you want to know why that tension comes up? That tension comes up because what the other person is feeling is they're feeling controlled. When you nitpick, and when you walk around and you're only talking about the small things, what the emotion begins to happen is they begin to feel control. So now defense rises, and now you're battling something to where now it feels critical. And when something begins to feel critical, now you're dealing with, you're forcing someone to step into actually trying to be very emotionally intelligent in the midst of a really heightened moment. Really difficult to navigate. And also very normal. Because what we don't know is when something's so small and I begin to do something that bothers Tierney, and it's something small, and then when she wants to bring that thing up, but yet I feel like it's now not just an attack, but I feel like it's my insecurity, it's my own issue, it's my like, oh, I don't know what to do with this, and I feel like she's not actually loving me, she's not caring for me, she's not a shared connection with me. What do? I'm going to be very defensive in that moment. She could be totally like on my side, down for all the above. But if I don't get that sense that we are shared life connected together, and my perception of her is that she just wants me to change the shift because I'm a nuisance or a bother or this is a pain point for her, that will shift on how we interact with one another. And I want to talk about a couple concepts on our perception and how we see each other that I think can absolutely alter everything and how, one, you interact with God, and two, how you interact with one another. If we're going to find ourselves to be a church and to be a community, that when we come in here and we hear this concept of common life, shared stakes, and we get to actually have the fullness of what real fellowship, biblical fellowship truly looks like, if that's going to be a real lived experience and not just a concept we talk about and then move on to another concept in a couple weeks. If we embody that, in 20 years from now, when you walk into 22 and you see that there are every single need met through the community, that there is no lack, that there is massive amount of culture, massive amount of diversity, but yet everything in common because the Spirit of Christ is what brings us in unity and in perfect common with one another. When that is not just a message one day and then you move into a different topic another, but when that becomes the essence of the church, we have to ask the question, well then how do we actually view one another? And I want to look into this passage out of Romans. I want to see Paul, I want to point out how Paul will walk us through a couple moving pieces to get us to an idea that I think is truly altering. And if you're honest, it will be challenging for some of us. What I will talk about today will confront some real fundamental things that you probably have thought your entire life. And I want to be clear that I'm not speaking from a position of removing something. I'm actually speaking from a position of just having a different perspective that doesn't turn the blind eye to something, but actually just chooses to see something else instead. So here's what's happening. Here's the context that's leading into Romans 12, right before we get there. This is right around AD 57, okay? So Paul is in Corinth, and now he's actually writing a letter to a church that he's never attended before. What he's about to do is he's about to actually send something to this community of people. He wants to encourage them. He wants to give them a sense of life, but he also wants to have them step into something that they're currently not doing, and they're facing a lot of oppositions in a lot of specific areas, and he's never met them. So this is kind of an introduction letter, a handshake, will you? It's kind of like, hey, we're meeting each other, and I have some thoughts for you. The audience that he's speaking to is, this is in the middle of Rome, and Rome wasn't just one church. This is a bunch of small house churches. And so you're thinking about, consider yourself in your living room and putting about 20 to 30 people in your living room, not your home. Their homes were not nearly as big as any of our homes that we have today. And so think about your living room, 20 to 30 people smashed into that room, and there's these dynamics that are taking place, and Paul's going to speak to them and try to help them. How can they connect at a better level in what they're experiencing? And this is what's actually taking place in their context. Claudius is the emperor, and so he got fed up with some issues that are going on with the unrest in the Jewish quarter, and he actually exiled and sent out and excommunicated all the Jews within the city. So now you don't have any more Jewish people that are in the context. All you have now is just Gentiles. It was a blend between Jews and Gentiles. Jews are now excommunicated from the community. They're all taken away, and now it's just Gentiles. And now it's been about 5 years. Claudius dies, and now this whole law that he put into place is now lifted. And now since this gets lifted, now the Jews are now coming back into the city, and they're trying to integrate back into the family system. As they get integrated into it, if you know anything about the difference between Jews and Gentiles, they're extremely different in their cultural backgrounds. This isn't just like, oh, I grew up in LA and I grew up in San Diego, but yet we're still Americans. This is vastly different in how they view the world. This is a significant shift, and you're getting two people that are sitting in the room that have a completely different worldview, a completely different view on life, on God, divine, everything. Now they're sitting together and they're like, hey, go be a church. Have koinonia. Have a shared deep connection with one another, and there is natural interpersonal relationship, and there's natural interpersonal conflict that is now taking place. Whose customs are going to win? What's it going to look like? What's it not going to look like? All the above. So this tension now is showing us that before we get into chapter 12, chapters 1 through 11 is this huge building story that says Paul is trying to tell them that there is this staggering mercy that God has for his people. And there's a shift now that happens in chapter 12, where he starts chapter 12 and he says, therefore. Therefore now is going to get extremely practical based off of all of the grace and mercy of who God is. So everything we're about to read and everything we're going to look into right now and have context is this. We have to understand that there are 11 chapters of him talking about the grace and mercy of God. That is the foundation. Once that is now solidified, now he's going to say, therefore do these things. Most of the time when we don't have proper context, we will hear what this is, and we would try to implement something like this in an old system, an old operating structure that says, I'm going to take this old covenant mentality, this works mentality, this earned, this performative piece that I have in my life, and I'm going to now just take new ideas, new grace, new mercy, and plug it into that old operating system, and I promise you, it won't work. For this to land, we have to find ourselves to be way more open, non-religious, and just going, I actually receive grace. As I receive grace, then I have an opportunity to implement this. So grace has to be the foundation of what we're going to look into. So there's a building block that I'm going to look at a couple ideas. It's going to land us somewhere. We're going to go on a journey together, starting with verse 9. Romans 12, verse 9 says this. Let love be genuine. Abhor what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. This is the foundation that's going to set us up for the rest of the message. He says, let your love be genuine. And when we hear that, we hear let it be authentic. Let it be real. Let it be something that's just alive. Let it be those things. In the Greek, the way that this gets translated is the word genuine is without mask. And so what we actually see is we see that in its time and its culture, what people would have is they'd have this, oh no, I'm sorry, I messed up. It's without hypocrisy. And without hypocrisy is they would translate that into a removal of masks. And what they found that there's these like stage artists that would get up in front in Rome. Remember, they're in Rome, and everything about Rome is all about status. It's all about climbing a ladder. It's all about honor. It's all about achieving this stature that you can actually achieve, and you will climb over every single person you possibly can. So then they had a massive amount of entertainment as well. So the entertainment, they would get someone that would come up here, and they would actually put on a theatrical play for everybody, and what they were called is they were called hypocrites. And so these hypocrites would get up there, and they would display a story to people, and they would tell this amazing theatrical play and put it on display, and they would all do so by holding a mask in front of their face. And so it's telling this beautiful, wonderful story, whatever the story would be, but it would always be done with a mask in front of their face. So when Paul is sitting there talking to a place in Rome that have two cultures that are vastly different to one another, he's saying, let your love be genuine. What he's saying is, you're going to have to allow your hypocrisy to be removed. What he's saying is you're going to have to take your mask off for your love to actually connect with one another. Because it's significantly easier to love someone through your actions and through your performativeness. Oh, it is so easy for me to just say the right things to my wife. It is so much easier for me to sit in a circle last night that I was with a group of dads and for us to be dumping our hearts about fatherhood and what it's like for us to be men and to be in the connection and for us to love our families and to care for our children. And it's so easy for me just to say the right answers. But you know what it costs? It costs you vulnerability. It costs a risk for you to remove your mask and for you to show up authentically, and it's going to cost something because someone can potentially see the real you and reject you. And that hurts, and that's an effect that actually affects the soul because none of us walk around unscathed from any of this. None of us walk around free from any of the effect of someone rejecting our most authentic self. So what do we learn how to do? We learn how to put a mask on. Some of us have learned to do a better job on this than others, but we all deal with this. We all have relationships where the mask can creep up every now and again. Some of us have a mask permanently plastered to our face, and all we know relationship to be is to be this performative action back and forth, and we don't know how to authentically engage with someone. Have you ever interacted with someone and you feel to yourself, I don't feel like I know that person really? I get a version of them, and I get a version of what they want me to believe, but man, I really feel disconnected from what you're getting is you're getting someone that is defending themselves, protecting themselves, and they don't have a genuine love for one another. They're protecting themselves, rightfully so. They probably have experienced a whole lot of pain and a whole lot of hurt. But what Paul's saying is, in order for us to go anywhere, we first have to understand that love has to be genuine. You have to remove the mask. And then he says, abhor what is evil. So now, love, now that the mask comes down, is not this thing that just says it's spineless. It's now just free, just love. Everyone has their own truth. No, actually, love just says, I love you enough to confront. I love you enough to speak my opinion. I love you enough to share my observation on what's happening. I love you enough to let you know, hey, that doesn't seem like that's going to be the best thing for you. Do what you want, but I'm going to share my heart. Man, I long for friendships to where I'm sitting there. Oh, you ever have those moments where you think you're so right? And you're just talking and you're venting and you're sitting there just like letting it all out, like this is where I'm at, this is what I feel. And then the person on the other phone or the person sitting in front of you, and they just meet you not anywhere close to where you want them to meet you, with disagreement, with different perspective, with how you thought of. Maybe that's not the whole story. And now you're sitting there faced with like, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't want to be wrong, and maybe you're misunderstanding me, so let me say it again in the next 5 minutes and try to convince you that I'm right. Right? Like, this is so easy for us to do that because what we want is we want agreement. And what real love, genuine love to one another is to say, hey, there's something missing there. I love you and I want to tell you what is real. And I've been blessed to have enough friends that I sit there and I spew so many things out that I'm just like so passionate about. I'll tell you a real authentic one. That happened a couple months ago with Pastor Jesse Kretzer sitting right here. Oh, I was getting super passionate about the church and what we could build, and discipleship, and spiritual formation, all these things. And I ran for like 7 minutes. Just going in, and like half theological backgrounds on all these things. This is what we could do, and this is what it is. And like, I think this is the heartbeat of everything. And I got done, I was like, oh, awesome. Pastor Alon was in the meeting as well. And I sat down, I was like, yeah, you know what I mean? That's what we should do. And I could tell Justin was like, not about it. And I was like, what, dude? What? He goes, I don't know, man. You just sound so religious right now. I was like, dang, dude, that is brutal, bro. This guy's a savage. This is your last day at this job, right? Take that from religion. Emotionally, I was pissed. Emotionally, I was frustrated. But I knew in my soul he was right. So I had to deal with it. So then we ended the meeting. I called Matt when I was going to the gym, right after that meeting. And I said, I just had the best meeting with Sauce and with Jesse. He goes, well, yeah, tell me about it. I said, Jesse's told me directly that I was super religious. We were a really interesting working dynamic at this church. And I said, I love that because I've worked in too many environments where that was never allowed. I was like, and he's not wrong. And I need that in my life. And I have no idea what that feels like to sit in that seat and to share that boldly. But I know what it feels like to receive it, and I needed that. And too many of us long for the idea of koinonia, shared life. But we don't know how to genuinely love each other like that. And if we can learn to genuinely speak to each other, because this is what I felt from Jesse in that moment. Mike, you can do whatever you want. I love you. But this is what it is. You are being religious right now, but I still love you. You can build that whole thing if you want. I don't care. That's not the point. I love you, and this is also true in this moment. Do what you want. And I was like, dude, I'm confronted. I need to figure something out now and either go with this or now, really, truly, the best decision wins and I get to move forward. And I think there's something that we can step into to truly embody and to learn that. Verse 10 says this, we go on. He says, love one another with brotherly affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. There's a shift in this progression that's going to take place in this. He's saying love each other with brotherly affection. Now it's going from genuine love to now this family system. Family systems are really broken in our context because very few families actually have a real authentic love connection. So when we see this, we don't really fully understand what this is. But to truly be the family, you got to think of it in the concept of what Scripture speaks to, of the spiritual concept of we are the body and Christ is the head. So if you think of one body, and we think of the value that I have on my left hand and the same value that I have on my right hand, I wouldn't say, you know what, I'm a little annoyed with my left hand right now, so I'm willing to cut it off because it's bothering me. I have no value for this. You ever stubbed your toe, like randomly, and like your toe hurts, and it's just like, oh man, I don't ever want to do that again, so I'm just going to remove that, just so I don't have to actually experience any type of pain again. No, we wouldn't do that. Same thing. When they speak of family in this brotherly affection, what they're talking about is there's such a hyper value and love and care for it in the same way that we would view our entire body, that we don't devalue one part of our body just like we would not want to remove it because it's having an issue. So what he's saying in a culture that is speaking to or that fully functions in climbing the ladder, accomplishing things yourself, putting others down, you winning yourself, as long as you win, and no one else does, it just matters on your level of success. He's saying, outdo one another in showing honor. Outdo each other. Don't sit there and have the standoff experience. Don't be in the fight in your marriage or in your relationship where you sit there and go, I'm not going to apologize until they apologize. I'm not going to own until they do. I'm not going to respond until they reach out to me. I'm going to let that relationship be what it needs to be until they make the first move because I've already tried. I sent the text, I sent the phone call, I tried to meet up, they canceled on me. Now it's in the ball is in their court. They can do what they want. That is a standoff mentality where Paul is speaking to us and saying this: I want to encourage you. Outdo one another in honor. Step in, and if they want to just not receive so many times, just let them know, I am here. I will see you. I care about you. You matter. Whatever it is that I can do, I want to take care of you, and I don't need you to now be waiting for me. I can actually meet you right where you're at. I don't need you to be anything different than what you are. The Jews to the Gentiles, I don't need you to function like a Jew for me to love you and for me to care for you. I don't need you to function like a Gentile for me to love you and for me to care for you. I don't need you to actually be living a specific way for me to step in and to honor you. I choose to love you and to care for you because you're a human being that God has designed. And that matters to me. It's a different level of love that Paul is getting these people to understand. And then in verse 11, he says, do not be slothful in zeal. Be fervent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. And be patient in tribulation. Be constant in prayer. That phrase, fervent in spirit, he's talking that your spirit has a temperature. He's in the Greek, it translates into a word picture of like boiling water. He's saying what I actually want you to do is I want you to be so in love. And I want you to be seeking each other, to honor each other with so much passion that it's like this boiling water. Don't let it go dormant. Don't let it go cold. Don't let it be passive. Be extremely intentional and do it with passion. Do it with fire. Do it with something that burns inside your bones to say, you may disagree with me, Jesse to me. You may disagree with me, but I love you. I know your heart. I know what you truly want, and that's not it. I don't care how passionate you get. I don't care how spoken up you are. I don't care what emotions you are using. That's not really your spirit, Mike. It's a different level of love that connects. And for some reason, we have not given our spouses access to this. I think one of the greatest things that our marriages could experience is if we give permission to our spouse for them to be able to speak to us, love us, and care for us like this. That I would go home and look at Tierney and say, permission for you to boil. Permission for it to be genuine. Permission for you to honor. Permission for you to just be free. And then she would look to me in return and say, permission for you to boil. Permission for you to love genuine. Permission for you to do that. Because I don't know about you, boiling sounds like a better idea than a reality at times. Because boiling, when it's mishandled, will burn. And that's the risk. And that's the defense. And that's the nervousness that we carry. But I tell you, where there is no risk, there is no reward. We are simply on autopilot, asleep. We're not functioning and awake on how God has crafted us. So the message of the good news and the message of the new covenant makes no sense to us because we're numb inside. It's such a great word for us to live in this idea of koinonia, this community that has all of it. But yet we don't want to admit that we have maps. We want to just act like someone else has got that. We don't want to admit that we're sheltered. We don't want to admit that we're asleep and that we're not boiling. We don't want to admit that these things come up and they're alive and well in our lives. And if we can simply just first take the consideration of what that looks like for us, then we have an opportunity for us to step into what verse 13 is. And this is how we can see each other. He says, contribute to the needs of the saints and seek to show hospitality. This word, contribute, I think this is how you say it. Koinonio. Okay, it means to share, to partner. This is the root word of koinonia. And this is where it shifts in its difference. The root is koinonia. It's this shared life. It's this partnership. But it changes to this, to make someone's needs your own. When we sit there and we live this life, we have an opportunity to progress in our shared mission as we are having a common life with one another so that we can make someone else's needs my own. So then what I feel when Jesse begins to bring up the thing up is we're sitting there, brothers, talking about what we're developing, what we're creating in this church, and he's speaking, and I can feel it from him. He's speaking from this posture, not to an extension of something outside of him. He's actually speaking to an extension of something within him. The left hand is talking to the right, and he goes, hey, what you're saying, I so care about, and I'm so invested that I want to make sure it stays pure. So I'm invested into what it is. And then you're contributing to what? To the saints. Oh, for far too long, the church has done such an awful job at walking around and making sure that we understood one thing. And it's great that we understand this, that we are broken sinners, yes. But that is only true if you're fully invested in the old covenant. If you want to walk around and look at each other as sinners and broken, you can do that and you will be biblically accurate. But you better enjoy the old covenant, the Mosaic law, and to function into earning everything else that exists in the scriptures. Perform your way through it. Earn your way through it. Better not make a mistake, because if you do, you have to actually figure out how to get yourself out of that ditch you got yourself into. It's not inaccurate, but it's not helpful or connected to the story of Jesus in the finished work of the cross. We get to function on this side of the cross. It is no longer BC, it is AD. We are 2,000 years removed from the greatest gift that Christ has given to us, which is grace and mercy to be received, never to be earned. And if that's the case, then we are safe before we are sinners. We are fully bought by the blood, by the broken body, by everything that he has given us access to, so that we can what? We can have a shared life together. We can have a completed experience with one another. The message is incredible. It's the greatest thing that we can receive and to enjoy and to embody. And the message is holistic, because don't forget verse 9, he says, abhor what is evil. So this does not mean that we just have love and we speak to each other as safe and we close our blind eye to anything that is wicked and evil. Not at all. Love has a spine. Love stands firm. It puts 10 toes down and it actually speaks to what it needs to speak to. It declares the truth. And the truth stings, hurts, encourages, uplifts, strengthens, equips. It does all the work that it needs to, but it only does to the heart that is open to receiving grace from the beginning. Everything else is mere performance. Everything else is just another act of earning it. The spirituality, understanding that Christ has done it for us, he is just so way more interested in just us enjoying what he has already done for us. I truly have a vision, and I have such a conviction and belief that there can be a community to live like this. I don't care what we do as a church outside of this. If we can devote all of our resources, all of our time, all of our energy, into helping our community of people come together. And when one's hurting, all's hurting. When one's celebrating, we're all celebrating. And that there's this genuine love and care, and there's a harmony like nothing in this world. And there's this beauty that's just flowing, this frequency of love and joy back and forth. And the world looks upon and goes, what do you guys have? What are you doing? It's just like, what is that? And we just go, we actually believe what Christ did. And we received it. And we stopped trying. And we stopped trying to earn. And it doesn't make any sense. And our entire system, we function so much more like Romans than we ever want to admit. Scripture doesn't make sense because we're the wrong, we characterize ourselves in the wrong category. We want to be the Jews. We want to be the Gentiles. We want to be the disciples. We want to be like all these ones that we look at into the stories, and we're not. America functions way more like Rome. And because it's done that, it's created a construct in our mind of how we function. So grace is really hard to understand. And true common life is hard to understand. But when you get a hold of it, some of us in this room have gotten a hold of it. My encouragement to you is this: get language. Share it. Have genuine love. When the mask comes on, feel free to put it down. Tierney and I have learned how to be good at putting our masks down, but the masks come up still. Some of us in this space learned how to put our masks down, but they still come up still. And so learning to constantly putting it down and to getting around one another and encouraging others to put the mask down. If you learned yourself how to put your mask down, please sit next to someone and encourage them to do the same. And can you be really honest about how you did it? Because it's not as beautiful as we often tell it. It looks way more raw and way more authentic than anything else. And can we just be honest about how we did what we did and how we learned it with God? And a lot of it is through a lot of pain. It's a lot through a lot of confusion, and it also comes through a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of uncertainty. Walking this journey out is very an uncertain experience because you're not in control anymore. It's relinquishing control to God and just be like, Lord, will you take me, will you lead me, will you guide me? I'm telling you, this common life idea is the greatest community that anyone can ever be a part of. And if we needed to define the church and say, what is the church? The church is as simple as ecclesia, a gathering of believers. What are the believers? It's koinonia. It's a fellowship of true, genuine hearts that are connected with one another, having so much love, so much care, shared risk, shared concepts with one another, and saying, how do we see one another? We see each other as saints. Yes, I know your faults. Yes, I know when you fail. Yes, I speak to those things. But because of grace, you are a saint. What would it look like in your marriage if you begin to look at your wife and you look at your husband as saints? Stop accusing each other and catching each other doing the wrong things. Always pointing out the mistakes, always pointing out the issues, always pointing out the hurts and the pain, being honest about it. But what if you actually pursued it from the perspective of sainthood? What if you looked at your children as saints? What if you looked into your business and your employees and you treated them like saints? What would shift in the environments that you walk in? How would genuine love pour out of your heart to the ones that are around you? What would life look like if we begin to interact with that? You know what it would look like? It would look like the kingdom of God would be functioning in the land. It would be fervent with love, fervent with joy, peace, and goodness. And next week, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but next week we end our series, and then we get to talk about how do we now go out and how do we live this in such a way to where the world begins to look at us and go, man, what is different about them that is different about me? Because the world is calling foul on everything that we've been doing as a church because we look just like them. We have one of the greatest messages of all time, but yet it lands flat. Because we don't know how to embody this, because we're trying to control it by much. And my hope for us today is that we lay this thing down and we just understand, God, because of your grace, 11 chapters leading up to this one chapter is all about God's just supernatural mercy and grace. And if we can understand 11 chapters of that, then we can understand one chapter of how to implement something different. So may we as a church learn how to step into putting our masks down. May we step into opportunities of seeing other people that are putting their masks up and being able to love them and genuinely connect with them and care for them, even if they don't want to keep their masks up still. And for any of us that have learned to put a mask down, may we have the language to share with one another and to encourage each other. I know it's scary, but I'm telling you, it's the greatest way to live if you put that mask down. And lastly, may we see each other as saints, not sinners. And never closing our blind eye to the sin, to the failures, to the brokenness, to the issues. Tierney knows everything about them. And that's what makes the love so beautiful, because she chooses.
My wife accepts me, and she loves me, and she doesn't need me to be anything different. Do I know why? Because I don't complete her. Her God does. And I just have the same view with her. I love that woman, and I know everything about her. And I don't need her to do anything different because she doesn't complete me. That genuine love will shape how you live your life, and it will shape how we show up together on a regular basis.